He probably won't admit it, and honestly, he might not even realize it right away, but there's a moment when a man truly decides you're the one he wants. It's not when you dress up for him or say all the right things or go out of your way to impress him. It's something much quieter than that, something more real, and if you're not paying attention, you might miss the fact that this exact moment is when he actually starts to choose you. A man doesn't fall in love with the version of you that looks polished and put together. He doesn't truly choose you when you're saying all the right things, wearing the right dress, or executing the perfect date strategy. No, the moment he starts to truly choose you happens in the quiet moments, when your guard is down, when you're not performing, and when life isn't going perfectly for either of you. Men, whether they admit it or not, are drawn in during moments that feel real. That's where the emotional bond starts to take root. It's in those tiny windows of vulnerability, when you're honest about what you're feeling, what scares you, what you want, but not in a dramatic or needy way, more like you're just being a human. You're not trying to be cool. You're not trying to be low maintenance. You're just showing up as you. And it's in that space that he sees something far more valuable than confidence or charm. He sees someone who's emotionally available, someone who trusts herself enough to let someone else see behind the curtain. You'd be surprised how powerful that is for a man, because men, whether they put on a brave face or not, have their own battles with emotional safety. Most of them were taught to be stoic, to not share too much, to not be too affected. And so when you as a woman step into his life and allow yourself to be fully seen, not for sympathy, not for attention, but because you're no longer hiding, it gives him permission to exhale. It gives him the quiet signal that this is someone he can actually relax with, someone who doesn't need to be impressed, someone who doesn't make him feel like he's constantly auditioning. Men get tired of performing, just like women do. They want to be chosen not for what they can provide, but for who they are in their messiest, most unfiltered form. And when you allow him to see your heart without demanding anything in return, something shifts inside of him. It's subtle. He might not even be conscious of it at first, but he'll start noticing how different it feels to be around you, how much lighter, how refreshing it is that he doesn't have to be the funny guy or the smart one or the successful one all the time. He just has to be him, because you're being you. And that shared space of rawness is where real connection grows. He begins to see you not as a partner who fits some checklist, but as someone he wants next to him when life gets hard, when he's tired, when he's scared, when he needs more than just a body next to him. He needs a soul that understands. And the moment he gets that glimpse of your realness, it leaves an imprint. One that the flawless version of you never could. Because the truth is, emotional intimacy starts when we stop trying to impress and start trying to connect. That moment where you open up, not because you're weak, but because you're brave enough to let someone in, that's when he leans in closer. That's when he starts picturing a life with you, not just a date or a season or a phase. Men choose in silence. They choose in stillness. They choose in those unscripted moments when they finally see all of you and feel safer, not scared. That's when the choosing really begins. One of the most overlooked truths about when a man actually chooses a woman is this: it happens when she stops trying to earn him and starts living fully for herself. There's something quietly magnetic about a woman who isn't chasing, isn't constantly reaching, and isn't sitting around waiting for validation. A woman who chooses herself first creates a kind of energy that feels different to a man. It's not detached, but it's not desperate either. It's not cold, but it's not clingy. It's the middle ground that most people never master. Being open, yet whole. It doesn't mean you don't care about him. It doesn't mean you're playing games. It means your self-worth isn't riding on whether or not he picks you. That changes everything, because when a man feels like you're trying to win him, there's a subtle shift in power. Whether he means to or not, he starts to see you as someone who's trying to prove your value. And as soon as someone feels like they're being convinced, they stop being curious. But when you're living in your own lane, showing up for your goals, your friends, your peace of mind, he feels something entirely different. He feels a sense of intrigue. He starts to wonder what it is about your life that makes you so complete. And more importantly, he starts to question why he wants to be part of it. That's the key. When you're chasing, he's evaluating. When you're thriving, he's drawn in, and most of the time, he won't even know why. He just knows you don't need him, and that makes him want to be needed by you. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's true. The very moment you let go of needing a relationship is often the moment you attract a real one, because it's not about playing hard to get. It's about being so deeply rooted in who you are that no one feels like your lifeline. They feel like an addition, not a rescue mission. And that is incredibly attractive to a man who's ready for something real. You see, when a man sees a woman who's not emotionally scrambling, he starts to feel safe in her presence, not just romantically, but psychologically. He's not being put on a pedestal. He's not under pressure to complete her story. She's already writing her own. And he either fits into that or he doesn't. There's freedom in that dynamic. It creates space. And in that space, he starts to lean in. Not because you're pulling on him, but because you're not. Your life becomes a place he wants to be part of, not because you've campaigned for his attention, but because you've created something worth stepping into. That's the difference between attraction and attachment. One is earned by being, the other is forced by trying. And men feel the difference. When you're not chasing, you give him the space to feel his own desire. You give him the opportunity to miss you, to think about you, to realize your value without being reminded every 5 minutes. That's when he starts making quiet decisions in his mind. That's when he starts picturing what it would be like to have you in his corner, not because you're pleading for it, but because you're clearly someone who doesn't settle for half-hearted effort. Men recognize when a woman has high standards for herself. It's not just what she says, it's how she moves, how she responds, how she protects her peace. And that level of self-respect does something to him. It challenges him without shaming him. It inspires him without manipulating him. It invites him to meet you where you already are. And if he can't, he knows you'll keep moving. Not out of bitterness, but out of love for yourself. That's when the real choosing happens. Not because you chased him, but because you didn't need to. There is something powerful that happens when a man feels space instead of pressure. Not the kind of space that comes from ignoring him or pulling away as a tactic, but the kind of emotional space that shows him you're not forcing a timeline, not demanding answers before he's ready to give them, and not turning every quiet moment into a crisis. Patience doesn't mean passivity, it means presence without panic. And for a man, especially one who's still sorting through his own feelings, that patience is felt on a deep level. It's rare, it's disarming, it lets him breathe. Most men are used to women who want clarity now, want labels now, want plans now. And that's not wrong, it's human. But when a woman shows she can hold space while still knowing her worth, that's when something shifts inside of him. He starts to feel like he's with someone who's not trying to control the pace of the connection, but who's confident enough to let it unfold. Men don't like being rushed into emotions. Even when they feel something, they don't always process it the same way or at the same speed. What a woman might verbalize and work through in one conversation could take a man days to unpack internally, not because he doesn't care, but because he's been taught to compartmentalize, to think before he expresses, to wait before he dives in. When he senses that you're not standing over him with emotional expectations, but you're still fully engaged and connected, he begins to associate your presence with peace, not pressure. That's when he starts to open up without being pushed. That's when his guard starts to drop, not because you pulled it down, but because you didn't try to. He sees that your patience isn't a tactic, it's just who you are. You're grounded, and that makes him want to come closer, not retreat. Most women don't realize how much energy they give off when they're anxious about the outcome, the texts that come a little too frequently, the subtle tone changes when plans aren't made, the questions that sound casual but are really testing the temperature of his emotions. A man feels all of that, even if you never say a word, and when he feels that pressure, he starts to shut down, not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. He doesn't want to disappoint you, so he avoids. He doesn't want to hurt you, so he distances. But when you let him know through your energy and your behavior that he has room to figure things out without fearing a reaction, he begins to value your presence more. Because now you're not just someone he likes, you're someone he can grow with. Someone who understands that relationships aren't made in a rush, but in the space between moments. And in that space, your patience speaks louder than any question you could ask. It tells him that you're not in this to fix him, change him, or fast forward to the parts that make you feel secure. You're here for the process, not just the prize. That kind of emotional maturity is not only attractive, it's transformative. Because most men aren't given that grace. They're expected to perform emotionally on demand. But when he meets a woman who gives him the gift of her presence without pushing for a performance, it rewires his view of connection. He starts to lean into that energy, not away from it. He begins to realize that your ability to remain steady while he's figuring things out is a rare kind of strength, not weakness. And that patience, that calm, that willingness to wait without withdrawing becomes the very reason he starts to choose you. Not because you demanded it, but because you didn't. You really... There comes a moment in a man's life when he looks around and realizes how loud the world has become. Work stress, personal pressure, unspoken expectations, the internal noise of trying to be enough. He carries it all silently. Most men won't talk about it. They won't complain, but they feel it. And in the middle of all that noise, he instinctively starts looking for peace. Not necessarily through isolation or escape, but in a person, in someone who doesn't add to the pressure he's already under. In someone who makes him feel lighter, not heavier. And that's often when he begins to choose. It's not always a dramatic moment or a grand gesture. It's in those quiet realizations, those small but meaningful encounters where he feels something different around you. He doesn't feel like he has to perform. He doesn't feel like he's being evaluated. He doesn't feel like he's walking a tightrope trying to impress you. He just feels calm. That's when he starts to come back to you without needing to understand why. He doesn't even always recognize it as falling for you in the beginning. He just knows that when he's around you, the weight on his chest feels a little lighter. That kind of emotional environment is powerful because most men aren't searching for perfection. They're searching for relief. And when a woman can provide that without sacrificing her standards or identity, she becomes irreplaceable. She becomes the place he feels most like himself. Not the version of himself that's trying to be everything to everyone, but the real him, the tired him, the confused him, the human him. And if he can feel accepted in that state, if he feels emotionally safe in that space, That's where love begins to take root. This isn't about pretending to be chill or acting like nothing bothers you. It's not about being passive or quieting your own voice to keep the peace. It's about emotional steadiness. It's about being the kind of woman who knows how to regulate her own energy and doesn't need constant chaos to feel connected. There's something deeply attractive about a woman who can hold emotional space without turning every minor issue into a relationship crisis. She listens, not to fix him, but to understand. She responds not to win an argument, but to stay connected. She shows up, not to prove something, but to just be there. And in doing so, she becomes the one person who doesn't make him feel like he has to escape, to feel free. When you become peace, you become rare, because most people bring their chaos into relationships, their anxiety, their unresolved past, their need for constant reassurance. But when a woman walks in her own inner calm, it's noticed. And for a man who's been running through a world full of pressure, it's healing. He may not say it out loud. He may not even fully understand what he's feeling at first, but he'll keep coming back. He'll keep leaning in. He'll start thinking about you when he's not with you, not because of how loud your presence is, but because of how good it felt to be around you. When everything in his life feels like it's demanding something from him, and you feel like the one thing that gives back, that's when he starts making quiet decisions in his heart. That's when he begins to see you not just as someone he enjoys, but as someone he wants in the deeper chapters of his life. The parts that aren't glamorous, the parts that are difficult, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Because he knows you won't just be there for the highlight reel, you'll be the calm in the storm. And even if he never says it out loud, even if he doesn't know how to put it into words, that feeling of emotional safety will be the reason he starts choosing you long before he ever admits it. There's something incredibly powerful about a woman who's not trying to impress anyone. She doesn't walk into a room wondering if she measures up. She's not overthinking every word she says or trying to curate a flawless version of herself. She just shows up. Authentically, grounded, present. That kind of presence is rare and unforgettable. Men, even if they can't articulate it, notice this immediately. It's not about being the loudest, the flashiest, or the most glamorous. It's about the ease in your energy, the confidence that doesn't need to be shouted, the comfort in your own skin that gives others permission to be comfortable in theirs. And for a man, that's a magnetic pull, because he can feel that you're not trying to win him, you're just living. You're laughing at things you actually find funny. You're speaking from the heart instead of rehearsing your lines. You're okay with a little silence. You're okay with not being the center of attention. You're just okay within yourself. And what happens in those moments is something he doesn't even fully realize at first. He starts to associate you with ease. Not just physical comfort, but emotional relief, because when you're not trying to impress him, he doesn't feel like he has to impress you either. And suddenly the dynamic between you feels different, real, grounded. He doesn't feel like he's in a competition or a performance. He feels like he's with someone who sees through the noise, someone who values truth over theatrics. That kind of authenticity is disarming in the best way. It lowers defenses, it builds trust, it creates a space where connection can actually grow. Men are constantly navigating a world where they feel like they need to be more successful, more funny, more confident, more put together. When he meets a woman who isn't buying into that same game, who isn't trying to be more, but is just being herself, it's refreshing. It gives him permission to drop the mask. And that's where the real choosing begins. Because now he's not just looking at you from the surface, he's experiencing how he feels around you. And if he feels relaxed, accepted, understood, he's not going to want to let that go. People often think attraction is about performance, about saying the right thing, wearing the right outfit, making the right move. But what really sticks with a man is how a woman made him feel when he wasn't trying, when he was just himself. No script, no filter. And the women who leave the deepest impact are rarely the ones who said the perfect words or had the perfect look. They're the ones who made him feel seen without judgment. That's the kind of woman he remembers. That's the kind of woman he starts picturing in his real life, not just his fantasies. Because fantasies fade, realness sticks. It lingers in his mind when he's alone. It rises up in his memory when he's comparing other people to you. When you're not trying to impress, you're actually doing the most impressive thing of all. You're showing him who you truly are. That's the version he will connect with, the version he'll fall for, the version he'll choose. Because that version is sustainable. It's not exhausting, it's not a show. It's who you are when the cameras are off, when the night is quiet, when the masks are down. That's the version of you he'll crave. And once he feels that comfort, once he sees the value of your realness, it becomes very hard to walk away from. Because in a world full of performers, you showed up as a person. And that's exactly what he didn't know he was searching for. A man truly begins to choose a woman when he realizes she's not afraid to walk away from what doesn't honor her. It's not her beauty that makes him stay, it's her boundaries. It's the way she holds herself when she's not being treated right. It's the strength in her silence when she refuses to beg. It's the quiet power in her distance when she senses inconsistency. And it's not because she's playing games or trying to manipulate the situation. It's because she respects herself too much to stay where she isn't being valued. That kind of self-respect speaks louder than any words ever could. It tells a man everything he needs to know, that if he's not showing up fully, she won't stick around hoping he will. She won't chase, she won't plead, she won't settle. And that more than anything else is what begins to shift something inside of him. A lot of people confuse unconditional love with unconditional tolerance. But the truth is, a woman who truly loves herself won't tolerate being treated as an option. She might care deeply for a man, she might have imagined a future with him, but she will not shrink herself or abandon her standards just to keep his attention. And when a man sees that, when he realizes that her love for him will never outrun her love for herself, it challenges him to rise, not in a forceful, dramatic way, but in a subtle and deeply convicting way. He starts to understand that she's not waiting for him to become something. She's already enough for herself. And if he wants to be part of her world, he has to show up like a man who deserves to be in it. Men test women more than they realize, not always consciously, but emotionally. They push the limits, they disappear and come back. They offer breadcrumbs instead of the full loaf, and they watch what she does with it. If she stays, they know they don't have to give more. If she leaves, not out of anger, but out of alignment, something clicks. Something he realizes he just lost someone who was willing to give her all, but only to someone willing to match it. That kind of wake-up call doesn't come from a fight or a dramatic confrontation. It comes from quiet certainty, the kind of energy that says, I know what I bring, and I won't negotiate my value. When a man senses that a woman is not emotionally dependent on him for her happiness, it changes the dynamic. She's not there to be filled, she's already full. She's not looking for him to fix her, she's already whole. And if he's lucky enough to be in her life, it's not because she needs him, it's because she wants him. That difference might seem small, but To a man who's used to women bending themselves to be chosen, it's everything. It tells him this woman is not an option, she's a standard, and if he doesn't meet that standard, she won't collapse. She'll move on, with grace, with dignity, without bitterness. That's when the choosing starts, when he realizes she won't fight to convince him, when he feels her absence more than he expected, when he knows she could have stayed and didn't. That's when he understands her value wasn't in how hard she tried to keep him, but in how quickly she let go when he stopped showing up fully. That kind of woman doesn't just get attention, she earns respect. And once a man sees that level of self-respect, he starts seeing her differently, not as someone to test or toy with, but as someone to treasure, because he knows if he doesn't choose her with both hands, he'll lose her without a word. So here's what it all comes down to. Men don't always say it, and they may not even fully realize it in the moment, but the exact time they truly choose a woman isn't when she's trying her hardest to be chosen. It's when she's being herself without apology. It's when she's grounded, calm, and emotionally steady. It's when she's not chasing, not performing, not proving, but simply living in her worth. He chooses her when she becomes the peace in his chaos, not another storm. He chooses her when her absence hits harder than her presence ever begged. He chooses her when he realizes she's whole without him, but still willing to let him in if he shows up with intention. That's the turning point. That's when the real decision is made, not out of pressure, not out of fear, not out of convenience, but because he finally sees her clearly. And once he sees that kind of woman, the one who knows her value, guards her peace, and walks away from anything that doesn't honor it, he knows deep down, whether he says it or not, he either chooses her now or loses her forever.